What is your near-term view, that's a 5-year view, and a long-term view, 20-year view, of the economic viability of Cecil County and its citizens?
Well, I would think that that would depend on which road we go to have economic viability. I think if the spending that has been going on continues, if taxes are raised and if it becomes difficult for businesses to want to move here due to regulation or any of the other stuff like that, you know, it could be a problem. I think the best way that we would move forward in viability economically would be what I will probably be saying all night long, which is reduce the size of government, control spending, make taxes as low as possible, and eliminate as much regulation as possible in order to bring in new business, which, as we've heard from the rest of the candidates that have spoken tonight, seems to be the key, is getting new businesses in. Specifically on a 5 or a 10-year plan, you know, I couldn't speak to how much time it would take. I think it's imperative, though, that we start heading in that direction to decrease the size of government in order to accomplish that.
Okay. You button, Dan?
As far as how I look at the economy for Cecil County in 5 years, I think we're certainly on an upswing if you look at the, quote, national economy and where the growth has been, and I'm very bullish on Cecil County's prospects. We also now will have a new strategic plan, which will require the county executive to set priorities, and one of the major priorities is economic growth. When you look at the CIP, even though there's 2 very large big ticket items on there, one of them is the School of Technology, which in 5 years will be graduating an additional 1,500 students out in our workforce, and if you just put a label of $1,000 of impact per student, that's a $15 million revenue potential increase of Cecil County. I look at that as a major improvement for our economy. The second thing is, one thing I'll do as an elected official, I'll look at all other revenue sources for this county that are currently being unrealized, and one of those is getting Bainbridge to start putting tax dollars to the county. I think it's been dormant long enough, and we really need to push that forward.
We're trying to get the clock, but if you'd help me, remember it's 2 minutes for the first answer and 1 minute for each rebuttal. So as we get to that 1 minute point, regardless of whether it says a minute 55 or 000, please help me by clapping. Okay. Anybody else would like to address that issue? Okay.
Does that include us?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
well, I would say that, you know, investment in economic development, we need to make sure that we're prioritizing our investments wisely. And if we're going into debt, I agree, we're strapping our ability for the future. And there is a lot of potential in closing up the gap, and we have invested on the major portions of the sewer line, but we have to live within our means. We are still recovering from this recession. If you look at the tax revenues, property revenues, they are still flat. We haven't come back. So holding the line on spending will not tie our hands tomorrow, but there's so many things that we could be doing today to invest in the
Keep in mind the rebuttals are still 1 minute.
I'd like to talk about that if I could.
Okay.
I hear a lot of talk about economic development. Economic development's been around a long time, and I don't see any improvements whatsoever from the money that we spent on it. I hear a lot of people talking about being conservative, but yet we're talking about putting more money into economic development. You can put all the money you want into economic development, but if we don't address the biggest concern in this county, and that's our drug abuse problem and the image that it creates, nobody's going to come to Cecil County. Thank you.
Okay. If I can ask between questions and answers not to clap, we'll get more content in.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Can I rebut a butt?
No.
Okay.
Joyce.
I would just like to say that as part of the $70 million bond bill, which I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about, there was the termination of the contract with Artesian for the purchase of our 2 wastewater treatment plants. And because that purchase failed, the county had to take that responsibility. So out of that $70 million, approximately 11.45 million is going toward the upgrading of the plants. And I think that that's something to keep in mind. Without infrastructure, businesses aren't going to come here, guys.
Okay, Chris?
I'd just like to say, as a small business owner, the best thing you can do to incentivize my business or anyone else's is give them back their money. I like the enthusiasm up here for government stepping in and helping us. But you guys, the government just can't help. They can't help us. You as a business owner are the ones that know what you need, know what you want, and know what you have to go after. And if you get out of the way and give us our tax money back, I guarantee you we could create more revenue than economic development ever could.
Okay, I'm going to choose to move on. We talked about installation of infrastructure. The installation of utility infrastructure in the 95-40 corridor has been talked about for far too long. How would you change the talk to action, and what specifically would you do to fix the problem? Mr. Dunn.
Well, we're getting into the budget session, or our budget season right now, and I think Public Works are drawing up some plans to move forward with filling in some gaps in our infrastructure along Route 4995, and I would certainly support those. And I think based on Scott Flanagan's presentations to us as board, I don't know if I've heard anything I disagree with strongly yet, and I certainly would support his efforts going forward.
Okay, rebuttal? Bob?
I would just ask, why do we have the opinion that government has to be involved in that? Why couldn't the private industries that need the infrastructure be the ones to fund that, whether it's a development of housing that needs electric brought into it, or sewer, or water? I just think that whenever possible, we need to stop looking at what government can do for us and what should be handled by the private industry.
Dan?
We have spent the money. One of the big ticket items in the CIP is Northeast Wastewater Treatment Plant to bring it up to the latest technology, and also build in expansion for 5 and 10 years out. So I think that is a very good investment in what
Ms. Brummel?
I'm sorry.
That's number one.
Okay.
And the other thing is, Joyce brought it up, we're taking back $11 million from a public-private partnership that Artesian was going to do for water and wastewater. We had 2 incumbents over here that did not really support that, and we're paying for it right now. So there's $11 million out of that 70 right now. Thank you.
Chris?
I would just like to add, I support privatizing as much of government as possible, probably as much as anyone in this room. But to take a sewer, water, both of those, either, and give them to a private monopoly is not creating anything. You may as well just leave it in the public, leave it to government to be where it is. I mean, it's not going to create anything. The best way to do this, I agree with Mr. Willett, is through the private sector. If you want to build houses in Cecil County, and you want to buy a farm, I agree the farmer should be able to build houses and sell his land for what he wants, and the agreement should be between those 2 people. Our deal here should be, we should be asking them, what can we do to facilitate it? Now, when it comes to putting in the infrastructure, that should be part of their deal. If they need 2 roads put into their particular development, then they should be paying for those. If they need to hook up water, then that should be in their deal. The rest of the county should not have to pay for a development in Northeast if you live in Conowingo or Rising Sun or down south. And I think that makes more sense. People want to talk about controlling growth. The economic freedom of people will control the growth. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll touch on that as well. I hear a lot of, I guess I won't say that. I don't want to strike against him some more. I'll just say this, where's the need? We keep talking about we need to have this infrastructure in place. Again, I've been here about 8 years. It's like Groundhog Day. Every single year we talk about the infrastructure and the growth corridor. Where are we? And we have this idea here that if we build it, they will come. It doesn't work like that. In Perryville, we took $1.2 million to build a pier. Nobody's come. No, no one's coming. We're taking $7 million to build more government buildings. That's their idea of economic development. If there's a need, let's talk about it. Until there's a need, we shouldn't keep discussing this issue. Thank you.
Diana?
I just wanted to clarify, the 20 million additional in spending for the Seneca Point did not increase expansion. I know that's shocking. And also, all we have to do is look to Elton and Middletown to see when a private company has a monopoly on both the water and the sewer, that we're at the mercy of their increased costs. And that affects economic development. Wanted to point out that me and Mr. Dan Whitehurst were in agreement. He opposed those exorbitant hookup fees. In the water sewer plan, it was overly ambitious. It included the port deposit interceptor that is not expected to be needed for many, many years. And the ratepayers are paying that cost, and then the taxpayers will be footing the bill after the ratepayers can't cover it. So, and there is an illusion, build it and they will come. There's an illusion that we don't have enough infrastructure. Yes, we do need broadband. We need
Okay, I'm going to use my discretion to move on, please. How would you go about raising revenue for the county government without raising property taxes in Cecil County? Ms. Bowlesby.
Economic development, it seems like it keeps coming up and up and up. But if we get businesses in here and increase our tax base, we won't have to raise taxes. The more business, and we need good manufacturing businesses as well. I'm concentrating on getting good manufacturing businesses here. Unless we increase our tax base, we're going to have to raise taxes somewhere along the line. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. It's very politically correct to say I'm not for raising taxes, and I'm not for raising taxes. But if you're going to use our road, if we're going to use our roads, if we're going to send our children to our schools, we're going to spend money. And so if we don't have to raise taxes, the only way to do that is to increase our economic base and to stop putting barriers in front of the businesses that want to move here. Let's make it easy.
George?
The bottom line is, when it comes to economic development and increasing the tax base, not only do we have to have the infrastructure in place, but we also have to have the educational component. We have to have vocational training for our students. We have to have the skilled workforce. When businesses come to Cecil County and they're looking at us as a location, one of the questions they ask to themselves is, are there enough individuals in that county that I can employ? If we do not have a skilled workforce, or if we don't provide the training, whether it be vocational or educational, we do not invest into the future, businesses are not going to come to Cecil County because we don't have a workforce that's sustainable. So economic development is not only infrastructure, but it's education and vocational training. It's an investment in the future. It's where we need to head. When you look at the ills of Cecil County, again, it's a social economic issue. There are more problems than just the drug abuse.
As we're talking about the need to raise revenue, I find that a little bit difficult to swallow when we're talking about starting a $10 million park in Calvert. Something like that can be very easily privatized if there's a need for it and somebody can make money off of it. I'm sure the private free market would take care of that all on its own. Maybe before we start worrying about trying to raise revenue all the time, we start looking at where we don't need to spend money or where it can be privatized.
Dan?
I think one area where everybody's kind of missing it, and I certainly agree with Councilwoman Bowlesby's on growing the business tax base, but what about government efficiency? I hope the county executive will take a good look at our local government now that our transition year from charter is over. One of the true unrealized benefits of charter is that we have one full-time CEO running our government, as opposed to the old method of getting 3 votes from a board of part-time county commissioners. I would also ask the administration to look at inefficiencies in having each individual department, whether it be the Cecil County Public Schools, or the library, or Cecil College, or Parks and Recreation, they virtually have total autonomy in developing capital budgets and implementing new building projects. I believe this autonomy costs taxpayers money is more than necessary. We have to do better than just cutting a check for a new project, and I hope that our investment is being spent wisely.
Diana?
And that's the very reason that I supported an auditor. Currently, we are at the mercy of the finance department in supplying the financial notes for the proposed bills. And when we're needing to make an informed decision, we need to have someone that we can trust with their financial data. Previously, when Bill Feely was treasurer, he was a great resource for getting that data. And now I have to do a lot of homework and try to find it myself. Also, increasing revenue, I think, what about decreasing expenses? I don't think government is supposed to be a business. We need to operate it as it was intended. And brownfields, I just wanted to say that we did pass, I initiated, supported brownfield legislation to take back those properties that have infrastructure and get them working.
Okay, we've talked about economic development. We've talked a little bit about the budget, so let's focus on the budget. And there are certainly those within this group who are members of Campaign for Liberty, and candidates have used the word, spending the taxpayers' money recklessly. And I guess that's a direct quote from the website. I guess it's appropriate, now that we're talking about expenditures and talking about cutting budgets, to ask specific areas of reckless spending and clearly state your offer of suggestions to correct the problem. So I will ask Mr. Dawson to take that one.
Okay, great. Let's start with the park that Mr. Willick already talked about. Every single town, major town for the most part, has a park. I know we in Perryville have a gorgeous park with ball fields, and places to entertain. Why do we need another park? I just don't understand that. The second thing is economic development. The last conversation, everybody was talking about tax incentives and building schools and educating people, things of that nature. That's all great, but nobody is coming to Cecil County if we don't address the crime issue. Simple as that. I think more money should go into enforcing our crime to make it a safe and affordable place to live. Businesses aren't going to come here and then bring their employees to live here if we're known as the pill mill of the state. You want economic development? We can get rid of the whole thing and put that money into our sheriff's office and go out and dedicate a whole squad of 5 or 6 guys to knock out this criminal enterprise of drugs. Those would be my 2 suggestions.
Okay. Any other comments? Joyce?
I just wanted to point out that the county executive has stated that drugs is certainly one of her top priorities, as I think most of the members of council, and that the proposed budget includes funding for another deputy for the drug task force, a drug court coordinator, an additional state's attorney to prosecute drug-related cases, and funding for initiatives through the health department related to prevention and treatment. This is expensive, but it's necessary. I do think that we are facing that problem.
So I hear that there are certain things that government should do and certain things that government shouldn't do. And perhaps there's a disagreement over which things fit in which bucket. So maybe you can answer the question in that context. Diana?
Okay. Well, I was going to comment on the park, and the park is something that I do think we need. So I do think government should incentivize that. But there is a plan that I promoted. In fact, I was the one that asked the tourism director for sports tourism of the state to come and speak. But it was supposed to use the plan of the Cecil Soccer. They did it with volunteers. So government could help. We could have partnerships. And let's see. Yes, there are some things that we should let the private sector do. And I'm sorry, I'll let someone else take that.
Okay,
You asked about specifics with the budget. The public library, there's a proposed budget for the library to get an increase of 3.5%. After looking at the library's website, which I gotta tell you, I love the library since I was a young child. I love going in bookstores, I love libraries. But when I look on the website and I see that there are 250 Xbox games available, not to mention PlayStation 2 and Wii games. When did the government get into the business of providing that? Okay? So that is one of the things that I look at and I go, they need, when we heard the testimony in here a couple weeks ago during the budget hearing, there was no talk of that. It was how they needed the extra money for research, all this other kind of stuff, which sounds really good. But you look around, you will find some stuff that government has no business being in. And that's just one glaring example in my opinion.
okay.
I have a few examples also. Under the small capital budget for the public school system, there are a couple items that stuck out to me. Various high schools, synthetic fields for $2 million. Perryville High School field house for $2 million. Economic development budget, if I have this correct, it should be close, $900,000-ish is their budget. We have a full-time county employee now, taxpayer employee, as a county executive. That should be that job. The job of the county executive should be economic development. We don't need a go-between department to do this. That should be that person's job. That was one of the big selling points, and Dan alluded to it earlier when we were talking about charter, was going to be doing this. Was going to be having this person that could drive the economic development department. So there's a couple $1 million there. Maintenance of effort for the school system. The school system is asking for $186,519,668. That's a $6 million increase from last year. That is $8 million bigger than the entire operating expenses for the entire county. Now, if we're not spending enough money already in the public school system with that, I don't know what to say. I really don't.
Anybody else? Mike?
Take this one. Based on what I heard, I would concur. I would be all for exploring options as to where we can get the private sector involved. As for specific cuts, as Chris mentioned, this past week we had the hearing with the school board, and maintenance of effort alone, if we were to take the schools back to that, I think that would be an over $2 million savings. And even small items. I know last year there's a line item for memberships and training. It's in almost every department that dramatically increased, and I think we can certainly take a look there as well. And I'd like to go back to, we had initiated in 2011 where we met with the various department heads before the budget and discussed where possible cuts could be made. And I would, for one, like to get back to that. So that's what I would do.
Okay, let me move on just a second. There's a question here, and I'm not sure that I understand exactly what's going on, but evidently we are renting a facility for emergency service, and we're paying $29,000 a month. What do you suggest for the 21st century law enforcement needs in today's era, hopefully short of staying in a facility where we're paying $29,000 a month in rent? Dan?
I'm not aware of that, but it sounds outrageous that we would have an expenditure that costs $29,000. I'm trying to think of what building that would be, possibly.
Just down the street, I believe, right?
Yes. Yeah.
29,000. Okay, don't know about the lease on that. I'm sure if I know a little bit about that building, it was signed several years ago under previous administration. I certainly hope our new elected sheriff will take a look at that and rectify that situation immediately. I think that's a classic case of unwise spending of tax dollars.
I think the essence of the question is not the $29,000, but what to do in lieu of the $29,000. Because it's clear that we could stand to have a capital improvement program. The question is, what do? We have to house the sheriff's department, the emergency management system, including all of our 911 capability, or we have to somehow pay the $29,000. And I think that's the choice that we face here, so let's put it in that context.
Well, okay, then let me comment on that piece. We just spent well over $20 million to expand and renovate the Cecil County Detention Center recently. If we were paying $29,000 and somehow that could have been incorporated and we had a missed opportunity, then that was a failure on a lot of elected officials not to take advantage of that.
Okay, any other comments?
I have more of a question. I know what building we're referring to, and I know how much it is. I don't know, I thought we were stuck in a long-term lease with that, are we not? Yes? There's really not a whole lot you can do about it right now, then, is there? Except for learn from it. Learn from what a massive mistake that was. Massive. And that's the kind of stuff that's why I'm running. That's the kind of stuff that angers me. I'm out here working hard as I can to provide for my family, and we have things like that going on. I'm not blaming any of the officials, because I think most of our people weren't in when that deal went down. But that's why I'm running. If you want someone that's going to fight for you and fight for your tax dollars, you're looking at it.
Okay,